Daf Ches. And we are about a quarter down the page. The line starts with the word Alakus Bemuchash. Okay. And we ended off with a question, which we didn't tackle then, because it was a tough one. Yeah, what's the question?
You said that. Actually, since then I questioned further. The first one is that we're saying that when the when the neshama sees the body, so it sees that Elokus is not just its preference, it's not just its perception, but there's really Elokus. So the first question is that so how? What is it about the body that the neshama sees in the body that it's not now it's a real thing, not a visual thing? And the second thing is that in the mashal we said that Yedias Matzias means like when a person throws a rock, you see a rock flying, and you know from that somebody threw a rock. So you see by proof. But when you have Yedias Bemuchash Mamish, that means that you see the thing. You don't need proof anymore. So and then you said the neshama itself, the neshama sees itself, and it attests to godliness. So the neshama is proof that there is godliness. But when it sees the body, then the body is something. So it seems like the opposite, right? Like you think that you see yourself, if you yourself are godliness, then you know it. You don't. It's not a proof.
Right.
Whereas if you see something else, then that would be a proof.
Right.
So,
well, I have to correct. I don't know if I said these words. If I said I have to correct myself, otherwise I correct you. Not that the neshama is proof to Elokus. The neshama has an inherent, an innate knowledge of Elokus. But because that this is innate, now what it knows it because of itself, this already means that it doesn't see Elokus as such. It sees Elokus through itself. And therefore it is not Elokus as such. But Muchash. But Muchash, let's discuss a little bit. The Muchash Mamash. We have enough background because of all the talks we had to understand the following. Gashmius, we say, we see Bemuchash. The double Gashmi, we see Bemuchash. Let's examine that. I'd like you to be with me on this. We discussed many times that when you see a room furnished, you see a table and chairs, you see the functionality of the table. You don't pay attention. What strikes you is what's happening here. What is this all about? Rather than there is something there. Okay. This is seeing the Inyan, what you're observing, with Seichel. This is the way the Seichel delivers it to you. Because the Seichel observes what's happening and recognizes what's its function, recognizes what it really is for. Okay? So this is the Seichel level of recognition. What if we reduced that and we said, forget about the Seichel. There is absolutely no function to it. You find the table standing in the middle of the field. Serves no purpose. It has no reason to be there. It shouldn't be there, as a matter of fact. It has no function, and yet it's there. When you say that something is there without any function, without any purpose, what does that point to? What does that tell you about the subject? That it is undeniably there. Something that is there, let's say, for a function, which means it has a defined purpose, a defined presence. Do you follow what I'm saying? A defined presence means that if the function, if this room would be converted to a storage house, storage room, then you don't need the setup in the tables, and therefore that setup would vanish. In a certain sense, the function limits it and defines it in a certain context. Whereas when you see it and you recognize its presence, devoid of any function, just because it's there you come in contact with an undeniable presence, a presence that cannot vanish, because it's there without a function. There's no reason for it being there. It's not in context. It's just there. This means b'muchash. Muchash means that it's undeniable. You actually can relate directly to the object, not through a context, not through seichel, not through some kind of a value. Now, okay, so far so good. You understand what I'm saying? The nefesh knows a lakus, no question about it. But the nefesh knows a lakus with its seichel, which means there is a value to this knowledge. It wants a lakus. It cannot be without a lakus. And therefore, Elokus is all valuable to it, but it still knows it within the context of what it is, what the nefesh is. I know it and I want it and I cannot be without it. So therefore, I know it because through the faculty of what I am, to the sense of contact, to the sense of value. This is called mitzias. I know it's there. Simply put, I know it's there because I need it. I want it. But when it comes to the goof, and you say, and it gets to know Elokus b'muchash mamosh, b'muchash mamosh means that it knows Elokus not through a context, not through its value, not through the fact that it wants it. It just knows it directly. Because it's there. This is knowing the thing itself. And this happens to the nefesh as a result of its hislapishins in the guf. Okay. So this should clarify your second question. The first thing, how is it actually happen that there is hislapishins in the guf? The nefesh knows Elokus b'muchash. There are two steps in understanding this. The first is that in fact the guf is the lowest level of existence, the guf gashmi. And as such, the guf in itself, in and of itself, the guf does not represent anything. The guf does not want anything. The nefesh is a chai and wants a lakus. The guf doesn't want anything. And when the nefesh recognizes the lakus that's present in the guf, there it recognizes a lakus that is beyond function, beyond purpose, because that's what the guf represents. Do I have you so far with me? A little more refined, a little deeper, this union is that in fact the nefesh is not just coming in contact, it's meeting the guf, like you meet a table in the middle of the field. The nefesh actually is mislabish in the guf, and it actually reduces itself, so to speak. It lowers itself into the guf and makes the guf alive. Brings the guf to life. What does it bring to life? The guf. The guf, that's essentially actually resistant to life because it's not living in itself. And the nefesh comes down to that level of the guf and gives life to the guf itself. At this point, where the nefesh reduces itself to that level, that it actually makes contact with the guf and is able to be mechaya the guf. And the guf, as we said before, is b'muchash mamash. It is in itself an out of context being. Therefore, the nefesh finds then the yin ha'alakus. In order to be mechaya the guf, he has to reduce itself to that level. Excuse me? Like speech. Well, speech is a little high, yes. Like we discussed in speech. He has to reduce itself to that level where if you tell the guf, listen, I'm going to give you seichel, are you going to come to life? The guf says, I don't know what seichel is. Not interested. So when it reduces, it comes down to that level where the guf comes to life. This is what the nefesh actually sees Elokus b'muchash. That Elokus transcends all limitation. And Elokus is not just within a context. That I recognize Elokus because of its function, because of its value, because of the light that it gives me. But I see Elokus the paramount, the way it is. Just that this is the truth, the absolute, the concept of absolute, as we said there, as we spoke in the past. Okay. I want to encourage all the makabel oilnikis, those who listen without objection. Please. We welcome objection. This is how we get to understand and know things. This is how you get to understand things b'muchash. Because otherwise it just makes sense. Okay, within context, you say, oh, it sounds right. When you have a kasha and a teretz, then it gets a different level of clarity. And then you get to know what we're really talking about. Okay? We are nearing the end of the Maimer. It's going to take us, a few more times. Anyway, we're nearing the end of the Maimer. We only learned one Maimer, and this is going for a long time. But we try to kind of dig in and explain all the concepts and so forth. And I'm hoping at the end of the Maimer to have a little session with you, or more than one, where you would reciprocate and you teach me. Mitamida Yesi Mikulam, right? What?
You should have gotten already.
No. If you're pretty quiet, I don't know. What'd you say?
Told him. He said I told him.
Yeah. Okay.
What the group is and interest in it. It's a group is represents a lupus without any context, right? So then the show nefesh to relate to the group has to go to find it itself also without any context. So what new did it bring to the group that it became alive now? What score is the group alive now? What is it?
It brought nefesh, life, at that level. This we'll still learn about. Okay. Oh, okay. So we're on that line. It begins with the word alakus b'muchosh.
Checking if I know what we're doing.
Okay. Kiyodu omuvur mokimacher at the end of the line. Okmoike, similarly, just as we described, what happens as a result of the neshama coming down into the goof, that it reaches a different clarity of its awareness, of its knowledge of alakus called idea, the muchosh. Similarly, alidei avedas haneshama, as a result of the aveda of the neshama actually labors with the goof. The neshama does not only give life to the goof and leave it at that, but it actually labors with the goof. Ubekiyim atero mitzvahs, and in fulfilling Torah mitzvahs, bihislapshusa beguf, as a result of the fact that when it's mislabish in the goof, because the aveda of the neshama in the goof is that the neshama labors, that all the inyanim that the neshama knows in itself, what the neshama stands for, the neshama is that the goof should come to also experience them, also realize them. In other words, if we understand the lakus in our moyach, even though there is a koyach haseichel, the nefesh actually is in the moyach, but we do not understand it separate from the moyach. It's the moyach that experiences that understanding. Because the koyach haseichel is mislabish in the moyach. Just as the chayas, haguf, even though the chayas, the life force itself, is a neshama inyan, is a ruch nizikir inyan, but it's not separate. It's not like there is a chayas within the goof, like there's water within a cup. But the chayas permeates the goof, and the goof comes to life. The goof itself comes to life. It permeates every crack and crevice of it. So that the goof itself feels and the goof itself lives. The same thing is when there's avodas on Shabbat. When I said everything that we understand in our brain. Clearly, that the reason we understand in our brain is because in the brain there is a koyach haseichel, but it is the brain that carries it, and therefore the brain experiences that inyan of understanding, the inyan of seichel. And ultimately, the truth is that it actually has a physical effect on the brain. Just as through physical exercise you can develop muscle, you can strengthen your physical body. Through learning, which is the exercise of the brain develops, becomes stronger, and is able to retain and concentrate for longer times. It physically becomes exercised and is more ready, more refined, more able to relate to spiritual concepts. This is Avodas Hamshamim we can do. So this inyan, that the neshama actually labors with the guf, bislapshus of the guf. The neshama actually relates to the level of the guf and works at that level. What happens as a result? Ali Dezeh. As a result of that, Bo Achar Kach Began Eden. The neshama later on, afterwards, after its sojourn in the guf, it goes back to Gan Eden. But then it doesn't go back to the same state that it was before. It reaches in Gan Eden Libechinas Idiyas Mahuz Holocaust. It comes back in Gan Eden with a different appreciation, different level of knowledge of Holocaust as a result of its Avodah in the guf. Because just as the guf is affected by the neshama is affected by the guf. Because the neshama has also that experience. When it comes back to Gan Eden, it also has a knowledge of Elokus, the hagam, for although shakoy the mislapshus of the guf, that before that it came into the guf, hoysagam kim began Eden. The neshama was already in Gan Eden before. All neshamas start off in Gan Eden. Mekom okem still, hu b'bchinas idiyas hametzius lavar. In Gan Eden there is knowledge of Elokus, but it's at the level of idiyas hametzius, which idiyas hametzius does not let you into the innard, so to speak, into its essence, because that's what idiyas hametzius is. Whereas when it rises back to Gan Eden, after that having been in the guf, then it's a different thing. The neshama then comes and reaches to a different level of idea and comes back to Gan Eden. It carries it with her. Idiyas hamos. V'ay ma shekosu b'likutei Torah dibra maska b'mivasina be'yomeid. In Likutei Torah he discusses this. And why is this all happening? V'haynu, and that is mitzad ma alaz haguf, because of the special superior quality that is inherent in the guf, shehu hagbe lemailo, which is much higher. There's an expression, hagbe lemailo, above and higher. Lebeshorshoy, in its source, mishoresh anshom. It is much higher in its source than the shoresh anshom. The inyan of shoresh we already discussed, and just want to reiterate so that they'll have his fresh. The shoresh of something is what allows this thing to happen, to be. So even though when it happens you don't see its great milah, because it conceals it completely. The higher the shoresh, the more concealed it is. But nevertheless, to a discerning eye, to the neshama, it actually senses, how come there is a goof? Because there is that level of alakus, that type of shemesh. Otherwise, there couldn't be such a thing. What facilitates that there should be a goof? It is the that there is alakus at that higher level.
Is higher shore facility the general rule or just applies to this case?
The higher the shayrish, the more concealed it is. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
It's general rule?
It's general.
We perceive Gashmi as Bemuchash, right?
Yeah.
We do, right? So what
But Bemuchash, at the level of the Gashmi is like a Muchash.
I understand. What does Neshama perceive Bemuchash? In Gan Eden, before coming down here. Does it have perception of Bemuchash of anything?
That's right.
What?
He doesn't need Muchash.
Really?
Yeah. Just like your Seichel. Your Seichel doesn't need a Muchash. Your Seichel can relate to things, it can relate things in context. Doesn't need Muchash.
That's why Neshama is not physical.
That's why the Neshama is not physical. But the Neshama has the capacity to descend into the physical world. This will still have a chance to discuss how that is. That's why only the Neshama, because the Neshama is actually rooted in Atzmus, that's why it's able to come down the mat. Yeah.
So we began to say that the to the group is the Mitosef or the Chayos.
Oh, are you going back or you?
Back. You said that.
Oh, we are saying the same. Next line. Let's.
No, but my question is.
Yeah.
And now we say that the neshama has a new type of idea in Alikus. But is that we're saying that? I mean,
That's what
idea and chayas and all.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Same thing. Because idea in the shama, you have to understand. We spoke about this many times in different contexts. Idea in the shama means that's what the neshama knows. Not that I have a knowledge stashed away in my record, and when I need it, I'll recall it from my memory. Idea means it knows. Actually experiences that. That's the level of its awareness. Idea by a person, the Yas is also Bemerson says we have Chochmah Bina V'Das. When it reaches in Das, means that this becomes our personal knowledge, our personal orientation. Okay, so because of the mile of the Guf, that it's much superior to the Inshoirish than the Shoirish Hanshoma, Meshum Zeh. Because of this, Alidei Yeridas Hanshoma Beguf, through the process of the neshama descending into the guf, Alidei Zeh Dafke. Only through this process, Mitoisef Toisves Oir BeHanshoma. There's an addition of oir in the neshama. An addition oir in the neshama, but he says it's like double talk, right? Mitoisef Toisves Oir. What is the Toisves Oir? You should have skipped the word Toisves. Mitoisef Oir BeHanshoma. What's Toisves Oir? When you say Mitoisef Oir BeHanshoma, neshama in Gan Eden, before he came down to the world, to the guf, also is constantly in an ascent. And there's also always adding more light and more understanding, more knowledge. But it is all within the same reach, the same realm. Here we say mitoisv, what's added over here? Not additional light, but toisv oir, an oir that is a different type of oir, an added type of oir, an oir that is an add-on to the neshama, that the neshama on its own would never have realized. This means toisv oir, toisv oir b'neshama, an additional oil that's added to the neshama. Umikol Hanal. From all of this above that we discussed, Yuvan Gamkin being Hadibur. Now we will understand being in Hadibur. Okay? Now this goes back to about a page and a half ago when he asked the question, how is it to explain why Dibur has that effect? That Pnimis Aseichel Vizgali in Dibur. And the reason for that, he says, on page Vov, towards the bottom quarter of the page, the reason for that is because Milas HaDibur B'Shoshe, the Mila of Dibur B'Shoshe, Shel Mila Mishere Shemokir Aseichel. And then going down a few more lines, it says, Ubiru Inyanhu. See that? Ubiru Inyanhu. That's about several lines from the bottom. On page 12, Ubiru Inyanhu. And this is where he starts the whole thing, because he starts the question. How does oil come down? You have to understand the whole process, the whole concept of oil coming down, because oil naturally would tend to go up. And he goes on to explain this from the Neshama, that oil comes down because the goof actually draws it. It's contrary to its nature, but it's drawn to it because in the goof there is this a higher shayvish, and the Neshama is drawn to it, and it gets tremendous uplift, tremendous gilu yoher as a result. This we understand in general. This is like the neshama is used like a mushal to explain how the inyan is in Dibur. This will explain to us. This was all brought in to explain to us how the inyan is in Dibur. Okay, so now we're going back to before that mushal, the beginning of that inyan. So Mikol, Hanal, Yuvan, Gamkin, Binyan. From all of the above, meaning from all of the above that we discussed in Oir and in Kalim and the Neshama coming down into the Guf. Now we'll understand how it is by Dibur. Because in Dibur we said that as a result of the Seichel coming down in Dibur, there is a greater Gil of the Seichel. You reach the Pnimius and Oimeg HaSeichel, which is like the Etzem HaSeichel, and we ask the question, why is that happening? Now we understand. The whole Inyan Hamshochas Oil HaSeichel Be'oisi is Hadibur, because the whole concept, the whole possibility that Oil HaSeichel should be drawn into Oisies Hadibur, to bring Seichel into words. Zehu, what is that attest, this process of bringing Seichel, Oil HaSeichel, in Oisies Hadibur? This represents the following. Zehu, this is Mitzad Ha'oisiyos. This is because of the quality that is inherent in Oisios. Shemitzad Shosham HaKodum Shel Malamaylo Miho'eir, because of the Shoyresh of the Oisius, which is HaKodum, which is precedent, superior to which is higher than Oir. This is why there is this, the Seichel ultimately is Mislabe, is Nimshach in Oisius. Bikmoi Benefesh V'Guf, because just as we explained in the relationship with Nefesh and Guf, Sha'Nefesh Hu Mibchinas Memale Kol Almin, Ve'Haguf Miseivel Kol Almin, that the Nefesh essentially is representing the Inyan from Male Kol Almin, and the Guf represents the Inyan of Seivel Kol Almin, and that's why the Nefesh is drawn to the Guf. So when the nefesh comes down into the guf, it experiences the inyan of Seivel Kol Almin. A totally different type of experience. K'moi kein, likewise, hu be'oir ha'seichel ve'oises ha'dibur. The same inyan takes place on this level. The oir of seichel, and oisi is ha'dibur shehem kelim l'hoir. And the oisis of speech that become the kelim for the oir that carry and contain the oir. Sheho oir, where the oil of seichel itself, hu mibchinas chochma. The oil itself is from the aspect of chochma. Shehu b'chinas oil v'gilu levad mehanefesh. We already discussed the union of oil ha-chochma, oil ha-seichel in the past. The oil is mibchinas chochma, even though it's not chochma that ultimately comes down in Dibur. It's bina. Chochma can hardly be put into words. Cannot be put into words, in fact. But the oil ha-seichel, is actually in chochma. If there is any oil in bina, it is the oil that the bina senses and gets from the chochma. So the oil is mibchinas chochma. Shehu, since it is from the union of chochma, and chochma is shehu, which is bechinas oir v'gilu levad mehanefesh. Chochma is only levad, only merely a gilu from the nefesh, something that comes from the nefesh. It's not nefesh itself. V'gam koyach hamaskil, even that which is higher than chochma, which is called the koyach hamaskil, the koyach that allows us, that makes us understand. Chochma is already a level where we actually understand, we actually sense it. Koyach hamaskil is that which allows for understanding, which is even higher than chochma. I remember we discussed koyach hamaskil in the past, maybe a little bit. Just to put it briefly, so we can focus in on this. Chochma, we define usually, say, what's chochma? Chochma, in our experience, is that bright spark, that vision of a seichel. That's what it is. When you say, that's what it is, we haven't yet grasped it. But now we have a means, we have a source, we have a means to get into it and start deciphering it. But we saw the nekuda, we saw the point. This is why it's called the Borag HaMavrik. It comes in a flash. This is Chochmah. Now, Let's examine. If we would examine our own mind, we say, okay, I don't understand this Indian. And since I don't understand this Indian, but I'm not giving up. I'm going to dig into it. I'm going to dive into it. And eventually I'll get to understand it. I'll get the point. How do I know? What does it mean? On what basis am I saying that I'm going to dive into it and I'm going to understand it? True. But we're not saying it because we know, we saw in the book, it says that the soul understands everything. We have a sense of it. We have a sense of it. So what kind of sense is this? If we know that we understand, don't we already understand it? In other words, if we already know that we can understand it, or we will understand it if we work hard, what's between that and understanding? And yet we have to labor very hard to get to the point and get this flash. I'm sorry? Baruch Shechiyonu that you speak up, so I can speak up a little louder so I can hear you. Huh? So what about it? Yeah, you notice, I want that we should actually speak in the form that we can relate to, not just quotable quotes. I'm saying things that we can relate to, really understand what we're talking about. If I sense, and I suddenly sense, right, I say, I'll understand it. As a matter of fact,
before this flash of cosmos,
before.
What makes a person in pursue this?
What makes him pursue it, and sort of with assurance that he'll get to it, and he'll get this flash. And as a matter of fact, we know, we all experience this, that the flash also doesn't come as in a flash. It doesn't come all of a sudden. Even though it's a flash, it's a sudden flash. But, you work for it, no question about it. But even as you're working, before there is a flash, we become closer to the seichel, and we already begin to have a sense of it before the flash even comes. We really begin to. It's like I have it, but I don't have it. The seichel reveals itself gradually, in a sense, even though it comes in a flash. So, because when it comes in a flash, so that we broke through, but it's like sunlight.
It's not unexpected. You feel like you're getting closer.
That's right. You feel like you're getting closer. It's not. Yeah, that's right. It's not. It's like the sun, like the morning, right? You say there is the Hashana. You know the sun is coming up. There's already a sense of it. You already see the Heir HaMizrach, even though before sunrise there is already a dawn. There is a dawn in Seichel before there is the flash, before the sun rises. So what is this all about? In general, this is called Koyach HaMaskil. Koyach HaMaskil means that this is a koyach that makes me understand. This is the reason that ultimately why I understand.
A sense of assurance. A sense of assurance.
No. Yeah, of course it's a sense of assurance. It's not the sense of assurance. It is that before I even begin to understand, I understand it essentially, but I don't know what I understand. Chokhmah makes me aware. I know what it is that I understand. Before that, I don't know what it is, but deep down, I already understand it. In the Indian, as we talked about seichel, using the seichel anushi as the easier reference point. We pointed out that when a person understands that a certain way of behavior is humanly correct, is correct for a human being, before that he senses the inyan that he is a human being. And he senses what it means to be a human being. And from that essence, from that sense, he draws the seichel anushi. If he were not aware of being a human being or what a human being is, he would not have a source to draw the seichel from. It's like we said the other day, many days ago, but like you teach a cat, it remains a cat. No matter how much you teach it, it'll never understand what it's doing. You train a dog, the dog doesn't really know what it's doing. Doesn't get to understand it because it does not have the koyach hamaskil. It learns certain functions, certain actions, and that's what it has, the certain actions. It doesn't have the koyach hamaskil. It doesn't come from its essence because it doesn't really relate to it. It doesn't belong to this in this realm.
We spoke about in reference to Koyach Ben Yis and the Koyach Ha'av. Yeah?
Remember? Okay.
And we said that so every
We spoke in Koyach hamaskil, I think, and many little references from here and there.
No, we had the.
Okay.
But my question is that we said then that everything's there. In other words, a person. No. Okay, I don't remember.
Everything is okay. Right, let's not deviate. So koyach hamaskil means that when I finally understand, it isn't that something strange has been given to me, but it belongs to me. It's mine. I really relate to it. This thing that I really relate to it is because I am a bar seichel to begin with. I have a koyach hamaskil.
Why does koyach hamaskil has to be separated as a specific koyach? Should call this thing koyach hamaskil.
Okay, wait, one second. So this, okay. So koyach hamaskil, this is like the essence of the seichel. This is like we say. This is the like I said. This is what allows me to relate to seichel and altogether. It makes it possible for me to understand. So he says, "V'gam koyach hamaskil," even the koyach hamaskil. Ask your question now. Why is the koyach hamaskil? Now it's even koyach hamaskil, which you would think that what? That's part of nefesh. Right? The koyach hamaskil is part of nefesh. So not only chochem, which is on a giluyed, but koyach hamaskil, which we would think is part of nefesh. But who bechinas hamshocha me'anefesh? Even the koyach hamaskil is also only hamshocha me'anefesh. Shenim shach lahaskil.
For a purpose.
It's nimshach. for that function, lahaskim. What is the point? That even though we do experience something higher than chokhmah, than oir chokhmah, there is really a gilui even in the seichel. There is a sense even something higher than chokhmah itself. The koyach hamaskil. The koyach hamaskil is also only hamshachna. It's not the etzem hanefesh. It's exactly your question. It's only hamshach me'hanefesh. What is hamshach me'hanefesh? Shenimshach lahaskil. These are all very brief references, but I want to try and point, the seichel, the inyan that these mean, even though this is not the focus of our learning here. Shenimshach lahaskil means that even though the koyach hamaskil actually, like you asked, is a representative of nefesh, because, like, going back to our moshel when we discuss seichel anushi, the seichel anushi, we said, is based on the fact that I am a human being. But in the Indian that I am a human being, there are many levels. And there is that level that a human being has to have proper midas. A human being works with his hands, he has 5 fingers, and his fingers have certain versatility and so forth, and there is talent and all that. There's many things come in human being. And all that is part of the essential human being, about the essence of what a human being is. Along with that, there is a specific function, and because he's a human being, there's a specific function that he is able to do, and that is to understand. What is he able to understand? He's able to understand only that which in Seichel Anushi, only that which draws from the essence that he is a human being, not an animal. Human being in contrast to an animal. We are talking about higher than Seichel Anushi, that we're talking about Seichel Aliki, from the Nefesh. But in fact that he's just a human being, human qualities, human values. So the inyan that is the human seichel is also drawn from an essence that he is a human being. But this inyan that he's a human being encompasses many functions, many aspects. One of them is that a human being has seichel. What does it mean he has seichel? A human being contemplates before he acts. And what is the contemplation about? Is this proper or is it not proper? I'm not talking about contemplation and the sly, like an animal figures out how to do things. He contemplates, is it the right thing to do? Is it humanly correct? He evaluates things. That's part of the function of a human being. And this is the fact that that he has a seichel aspect is one of the functions of him being a human being. Even though ultimately it's all rooted in the essence of being human, but from that, of the essence of being human, there is what's called the hamshach. There is a certain, a specific revelation, specific activity that takes place in line of understanding.
You said before that the essence of human being is Chabad, which is something in mind of you. So what do you mean is Hamshacha from you're saying that, right?
It's a hamshacha from the nefesh. The essence of a human being is Chabad. What does that mean? It means that all functions of the human being have to filter through the seichel. The Chabad in the human being is not just another set of koiches, but it filters through the seichel. Everything has to filter through the seichel, and that is the essence of the human being.
But the Kohen HaMaskil is not an essence of the soul.
Kohen HaMaskil is not the essence of the soul.
So I'm sure.
Right. But it's certainly representative of the union of the seichel, of the nefesh, but it's not it's nimshach lahaskel. It is when the nefesh, from the nefesh is nimshach, that particular function to be masculine.
And human being, mean the show of the goof, that's this human being, right? And for that thing, Chabad is the essence. But for nefesh itself, it's just some show to the last.
Right. There's a story of the great philosopher Aristotle. You heard about Aristotle? The reason I say great philosopher because he is actually quoted in Sifrei Kodesh. Okay, so and he dealt very deeply in certain even the Rambam quotes him. So there's a
Do you know where the Rambam quotes him?
he quotes him in Meir Nevuchim a lot. As a matter of fact, the Meir Nevuchim is kind of a lot of it is based on Aristotle, and not only the Rambam, many other Chachamim, even in Halacha he is quoted, not for the purpose of Halacha, but just just a quote for in the line of the argument. So the story is Aristotle, who was a great philosopher, and he actually he taught not only philosophy of faith, but philosophy of morality, ethics. And it happened once that Aristotle himself was caught actually in an immoral act. So the Talmidim, he had dedicated Talmidim to ask him, how is it possible for this great teacher that he should have failed in this type of a thing? So he answered that this was my animal. This was the animal in me that was acting. It's not me. It's my animal. Otherwise, it's not my human quality, it's my animal quality. So, what does this mean? It means that even though he was a great philosopher, but without the process, without Torah, the philosophy is a koyach haseichel, and something else. And the midas are koyach from midas, and whatever other interests a person has are all independent koyachs. There isn't this unification that everything has to be filtered to the seichel. Only in Torah is there this power that everything filters through the seichel. Because in Torah there is the principle that, like we are learning now, that even the goof is a godly creation. Not like two separate worlds. The goof is one thing and the neshama is something else. And since that the goof is also a godly creation, therefore the goof also is capable of receiving godly instruction, so that all the koiches in a person can be directed and illuminated with the seichel, which is the first inkling, the first insight that a person has of godliness, and get highest through the seichel. Whereas without Torah, you don't see the similarity between seichel and gashmius. There's no connection. As we're learning now, that the neshama on its own, like it doesn't know of gashmius, doesn't know that quality that is contained in gashmius. And that's why it's impossible to unite the two. And we see it today. I mean, they're not for Aristotle's, but we see it today. This is common knowledge of everybody, that the most immoral people today in the world are the great professors in the universities. Really. Because that's nothing for them. That's nothing for them. But we know that no, it goes through. I mean, we have the totally different process, totally different sources and koiches. We know that everything comes from Hashem, everything comes from the neshama, and everything comes through the seichel. And the seichel, the moyach, gives highest to the whole, to the midas, and gives highest to the actions. Ultimately. And this is how we're able to funnel everything and to filter everything through our seichel. Able to control and lead ourselves and be able to do avodah with the good. Okay.
Yossi Rabbi Yossi Jacobson has a great quote from the college professor.